Hey Internet, Caligula here, and welcome to another video. As you can see by the title of this video, today I am doing a speed build, and for that speed build I'm recreating Murder House from American Horror Story. Now, Murder House is the location or the setting of the first season of American Horror Story, which I watched very recently. I think that I'm going to be doing a lot of other American Horror Story themed videos soon, so be on the lookout for that. But anyway, so I thought that I would try building the house from the first season because it's an old house and it's this Queen Anne, I think, style that's set in like Southern California, I believe. And it's just a beautiful old house with a lot of like history and a lot of interesting things that happen in it. So I'm not gonna give away too many spoilers in this video. In fact, I really won't give away any. I'm mostly gonna talk about the characters and just tell you a little bit about who they are. But if you definitely don't wanna hear any spoilers about this, maybe you shouldn't watch this video. Anyway, on to the build. So I started out by building the central tower that has the circular roof just because I found that was the easiest place to begin, and then I just sort of went from there. I did spend a lot of time working with the windows in this build because the windows are really important because they're what make this house really iconic. And at first I considered using custom content windows that were in the shape, that were the same shape as the windows of the actual house. But I don't know, they just didn't really look right. And also I couldn't find any custom content windows that were stained glass. So in the end, I just decided to go with the stained glass windows that came with the game. And I think that it turned out really nicely. The reason why I wanted to use custom content windows was because I really wanted to use windows that were framed with a white border. If that's what you call it? But in the end, I just decided to try using exterior wall pieces to mimic the white outlines, and I think that it turned out pretty nice, although it was hell to try to work with the freezes. I think that this was a good learning experience because I'm not good at working with freezes at all, and I usually tend to avoid them, but they do just make a house look so good, especially old houses. And this house, when you look at it, it really looks... Cookie cutter isn't the phrase that I mean. When I say that, I mean that this house really just looks like a cake. It looks like a gingerbread house almost because the borders and the outlines of the house are all just like thick, like strips of icing, if that makes any sense. I don't know. As you can see, I'm just working on where I want everything to be placed in the house. So I decided that I would make it 3 stories, even though I think it's only 2, maybe 2.5 stories in the actual house. And I decided to do that just because there's no way that we could have slanted roofs, so there's no way that I could build an attic. And also I just thought that it was a fun idea to have Violet have her own room. So if you don't know about this season, let me tell you a little bit about the characters who live in this house in the time that I built it. So this is a very old house and several families have lived in it, but the family that moves into it at the beginning of the American Horror Story season, I actually don't remember their last name. No, I don't remember their last name at all. But there's a husband, a wife, and their daughter Violet. So I actually don't remember the husband and wife's name either. Oops. Yeah, it's been a couple weeks since I watched it. Why don't I remember? I should remember. Anyway, so their daughter Violet is a teenager. I think she's like 15 or 16, and she's pretty dreary. She's a lot like Wednesday Addams, sort of, and when spooky things start happening in the house, she is one of the first people to understand them and to like sense what's going on and pick up on it. But she also, when they first enter the house, the realtor mentions that people have died here in the past, and Violet immediately says, "We'll take it." But so I thought it would be fun to give Violet her own floor on the 3rd story, and I think that it worked out too with the outside structure of the building as well. Moving on now to the roof. So the Cats and Dogs roofing capabilities really made this build possible. I mean, maybe other builders could have done this without the new roofs that came with Cats and Dogs or the update that came along with Cats and Dogs, but I definitely couldn't have. No way. No way. So I was so thankful that those were available in the game, and I actually haven't experimented too much with them, so it was really fun to do that as well. I always have a bit of trouble with roofs, although I am getting better at them. I have to do a lot of experimentation. I always get messed up with roofs when it comes to sliding them through other walls. And I think that I always run into trouble when I try to have 2 stories open, if that makes sense, like a 2-story tall room. I think that when you slide roofs over those, like, things start to get tricky. But I don't know. I had a lot of fun with the roofs on this house. They really weren't too complicated, and I really think that like the rest of the roof pieces were just focused on showcasing that round rooftop tower. For the exterior color of the build, I definitely wanted to go with a brick, and I decided on this light, very fresh brick in the end because I thought it contrasted well with the white columns. And I really tried to copy as much as I could pictures that I was looking at of the actual house. So I should mention that this is a Murder House inspired build. And by that I mean I tried as hard as I could to copy it, but I'm not that good at this. So if it doesn't look like it, that's probably why. For a while, I considered putting a front porch on the build because I remember during the Halloween episode of the season that they had trick-or-treaters come to the porch, but I guess that must have been the back porch because there isn't actually a porch on the front of the house. Anyway, I decided that I really wanted to recreate the iron fencing out front and just make it look like a little sun-tired and overgrown, but like it had once been a lush garden, especially because there are a lot of iconic shots of the front of the house. For instance, when the what is it called, the Murder House tour passes, and who is that guy who plays the tour guide? I can't remember his name. What's that actor's name? Anyway, I also wanted to put some dead trees in the front yard because I thought that they looked really great, and I thought that they made the front yard look pretty spooky, but I also wanted to put some live ones as well. And as usual for the landscaping, I put a bunch of grass everywhere, and then I just put a bunch of flowers everywhere as well too. I ended up changing a lot of the front yard off camera, so sorry if I cut a lot of it out. So the first room that I furnished was Violet's room, and for some reason I decided just to start at the top of the house and furnish all the way down. So I don't actually remember if her wallpaper was actually wallpaper or if it was paint, and I don't actually remember if it was a green, but the mood of it was green at least. And also I remember her room being, very dark, so that's why I decided to go with this light green wall and also the very dark woods, as well as a very dark colored bed. And I tried to match the rest of her furniture with that. I really like how Violet's room turned out in the end. I actually end up getting rid of the door to the bathroom, however, just because I couldn't figure out what else I wanted to do with the upstairs, so I considered for a while having another bedroom. I considered for a while having only Violet's room upstairs, but then the bathroom ended up being huge, and it seemed like Violet's room was actually better than the master bedroom. So I decided to just add a second bedroom upstairs, but I actually ended up turning it into an attic and putting the second bedroom on the floor below. You'll see that later. Anyway, I end up getting rid of that entrance to the bathroom and having a hallway outside, which I think is really cool. I liked it how it was before because originally it was like this tall walkway across the atrium. I don't know if you'll actually see that. You might later on. But I end up turning it into just like a whole upper floor area, but it's still really cool. I can't actually wait for you to see the atrium later in this build. I had a lot of fun furnishing Violet's room. For some reason, I always have fun furnishing teenage bedrooms. I just think that the decor items are really cute, and I think that it's fun to give them a lot of personality, and Violet does have a lot of personality. So I definitely took inspiration from her character in this build, which is why I put these, you know, sort of mystical candles. I end up changing the color of that desk to another dark wood later on. So I also wanted to make it look like she was into spookier things or like darker things. So I put up some black posters that looked cool. I don't know if they're really like exactly her style. I wish that there were more band posters because that's what I really needed, because Violet is really into music. I do find later on the stacks of CDs, and I just think that that gave the room a nice finishing touch. But yeah, so I really wanted to make Violet's room look like Violet. I wanted it to have some purple accents, and I wanted it to have a sort of like greenish dark tone. Not that Violet has a greenish dark tone. I mean, she is moody, but I don't know. Violet, green complements Violet. So I'm actually going to show you some footage of me furnishing a bathroom, which I don't think I've ever done before on my channel. This bathroom was huge. This is the upstairs bathroom, and I decorated both bathrooms in the same way. I do that in a lot of houses, and I think it makes sense. Like, if one person is decorating or is the designer of the house, then they're probably going to have very similar styles in both of the bathrooms, and it just makes sense if like one person in the family is styling the house for them to order a lot of materials, enough to style both bathrooms, although maybe not all residents of this house would have done that. So let me tell you a little bit about the first resident of Murder House. I won't give away any spoilers, I'll just tell you a little bit about them. So the first resident of the house was, one of them was Nora Montgomery, who was the wife of a doctor who I'll tell you more about later. But Nora was the first designer of the house, and she decorated it with a lot of Tiffany lamps and a lot of dark, I think, cherry woods. She knew exactly what she was picking out, and it was all done according to her taste, and she would always be disgusted with any modern touches, which is actually why I had so much trouble picking out a shower, because I didn't want the shower to look modern, but the bathroom was so big that I didn't know what else to do, and I just felt like I needed to fill it up with more stuff. But I really like the bathtub there. I like how it's under the windows, and I think that that would be a beautiful place to bathe. Moving on now to the master bedroom. So the master bedroom is on the second story, and like I've done a lot in this build, I end up changing a lot off camera. So originally my idea was to include a bathroom in the bedroom, but with a half wall secluding it from the rest of the room. So I did that, and I fiddled around with it for a while and managed to make it look nice enough for me. But then when I was looking around the room and checking out how it looked at the end after I'd furnished it all, I decided that no, I really want to rearrange the furniture so that it matches some of the shots that took place in the bedroom of the first season of American Horror Story. And so yeah, I end up getting rid of that bathroom totally later on and placing the bed. And actually, I end up moving the door in the hall to the other side of the room and placing the bed so that the door is on the left side, because that's where it is in the series, and that's actually pretty important for some of the story points. But I won't go into much detail there. But yeah, so I end up rearranging everything anyway. But basically, I have near the what do you call that? The bay window, the stained glass window. I end up turning that into like a little study area, and I also end up putting a vanity in the corner. So the the misses of the series can get ready in the morning if she went, and I wanted it to look like an antique vanity, like one that maybe the original owner would have left behind. Oh yeah, and I tried so hard to get rid of the frieze that was peeking through that bay window, but I just tried to cover it up with some curtains as best as I could. I end up enlarging those curtains. I might, when I take the screenshots for this, I might end up sizing those back down because it looks kind of silly, but yeah, I tried. Moving on now to the nursery upstairs. So this is on the second floor across from the parents' bedroom, directly across from the parents' bedroom, actually. Or is it, since I moved the door? I don't remember. Anyway, so as you can see, there are 2 cribs in this bedroom. I guess that's kind of a spoiler, but ignore that. So one of the cribs is antique, and that's because of something that happens in the series. I actually really wish that we had a few more cribs in The Sims, because I think that old one is the only one, and I really was looking for a red crib. I actually do end up changing it later on to a red lined crib, but it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. But yeah, it's the only crib we had. So I just wanted this to look like the nursery for a baby that has not come yet, that a family is expecting, but that has not yet been born. And so I wanted it to look like it had been decorated, but that nothing had been moved in yet. Now for the kitchen. So I was pretty excited to furnish the kitchen because I knew exactly what I wanted it to look like. I actually wished that it were a little bit smaller, but I still really like how it came out. I knew that I wanted it to have crisp white cabinets and also this tiled floor. I do wish that we had a checkered tile that had a smaller checker, if that's how you describe it, because I don't know, I think that this looks a little too modern, a little too 50s, but I still really like it anyway. And I really liked creating this huge island here. I did have some trouble figuring out how I wanted to place the cabinets because I really wanted to fit in 2 stoves, because in the house there's, I think it's an 8-burner stove. It's either 6 or 8 burners, but yeah, some weird things start happening, and one of the characters goes down at night and starts turning the stove on for no reason, really. But yeah, so I wanted to have that stove actually be a focus, so I was trying to figure out how to position it around other cabinets, because I don't know what it is when I'm furnishing kitchens, but I don't like to have anything above the stove, like anything flammable above the stove, and I don't like a lot of the hoods that are available, so I often just don't put one. But yeah, so I can't bear to like put cabinets over them, even though it often looks better. So I also end up including a little dining nook in the kitchen as well, which I think looks super nice. Yeah, this dining table actually came with the Cottage Garden Stuff expansion pack, and it's just fabulous. I think it might be the only circular dining table that we have, at least the only one that's this huge. It fits 6 seats. I actually thought that was too much, so for a dining nook, especially because there's a whole dining room next door, which you'll see me furnish in a minute. But yeah, so I took away 2 of the chairs and left only 4. You can see me putting above, I didn't put it above the stove actually, but I just added in some clutter items, including a little coffee rack, which I think looks super, super cute. And then I end up adding in some curtains later on. And yeah, I think that the kitchen looks fresh and beautiful, a little bit bigger than I would like, but I think that it looks like pretty close to what actually is in the series, in the real house. Moving on now to the dining room. So I often, when I furnish rooms, before I start recording, we'll just pick out a lot of furniture and then just scatter it around and just try to pick out the furniture that I want, so you don't just see lots of me choosing things. So if this footage looks really cut up, that's why. Also, when I build, I know I don't do builds very frequently on my channel, and that's because I'm a really slow builder, so I really just like to take my time with them. And when I work on a build project, I'll usually work on it for at least a week. Usually like 2 weeks actually, and around that time is when I start to get sick of it. But yeah, I really like how this dining room came out, especially after I start adding some of the scary portraits around, because I really wanted it to look like, I really wanted the dining room to look like how it looked in the series with, this isn't a spoiler really. So I mentioned the first 2 residents of the house. I mentioned one of the residents of the house earlier, Nora Montgomery, and I also mentioned her husband, which I will talk more about him later, like I said. But I really wanted the dining room to look like how it did when they were sitting across from each other in here. So you can imagine a lady from the 1920s sitting in that princess chair at one end of the table and her husband, the surgeon, sitting at the other end. They also had a baby who was seated between them, I think. But yeah, I tried to put some portraits that would reflect who those people were. So like I said earlier, I was building this house to actually be in the present day or whenever the series takes place, but I still think that maybe a lot of the furniture from when the Montgomerys lived there would have been in the house. In fact, I know it was. That was integral to some of the plots in the series. But yeah, I think that this dining room looked beautiful, especially with all the candlelight. Here you can see me fiddling around with some of the pictures. So I wanted to include this picture of this old woman because Nora Montgomery often mentions her mother in the series. And I also thought that the people in that other painting resembled some of the other former residents of the house. But yeah, I just thought that those portraits made it really come together. Moving on now to, I guess it's the study and the office that adjoins it. So I used the same wallpaper with the dark base that I used in Violet's room, and I also added in a fireplace. Well, mostly because I think that there actually was a fireplace in the series. There must have been one somewhere in the house, but also because I had put on a chimney. I had built on a chimney to the outside of the house on that side of the exterior. You'll see it in the screenshots, but I had put a chimney out there to make it look more interesting. So I thought that I would just include the fireplace here. I really like the office that adjoins it too. I think that came out really well. This was quite a small room actually, so I did have some trouble figuring out how to fit the furniture in there once I had selected it, and I was really excited to use this beautiful tufted Victorian couch. I don't know if I included too much furniture in this little space. I really wanted to include that leather armchair because the husband in this series who lives in this house is a psychiatrist, and he sits in an armchair like that, and it just looks like a psychiatrist sort of armchair. But I think it's beautiful, and I really wanted to include it. Moving on now to the adjoining office. I really, really like how this came out. I don't think that I've ever used this wallpaper with the paneling before, and I just love how it looks. And I also don't think that I've ever used at least that shade of those bookshelves there. I love mixing and matching bookshelves, and I love bookshelves that already look cluttered because that means that I don't have to add in a bunch of clutter items myself. But I really wanted to make it look like a lot of books that had been there for a long time and a lot of furniture that had been there for a long time. And yeah, I just think that this wallpaper that pops looks gorgeous. And yeah, I just think that it really came out nicely. I also really like those bright wooden blinds that I included over the office windows because, yeah, if you're working in this office, maybe you want to shut people out sometimes. But yeah, this is the psychiatrist's office. And the room adjoining is the living room, and it's also where he has his consultations or his appointments. That's where he sees his patients. But because this is an office, I also wanted to include a chess table, and I think that I really like how I positioned it. I just think that it helps divide up the room nicely, and it doesn't take up too space. It's not too crowded, but it still has that cozy and warm office sort of feel. Moving on now to the last part of the interior, we're now furnishing the basement. So I've mentioned Dr. Montgomery a couple times already, and I mentioned also that Dr. Montgomery was, well, that he's a doctor. He was a surgeon, in fact, and I'm not going to give anything away, but he did a lot of freaky stuff down in this basement, which I kind of hint at with the furnishings that I put in here. I tried to mimic the layout of the basement as it actually is in the series, but in the series it's a walkout basement, so it wasn't really possible to do it exactly, but I still think it came out really well, and I was glad that I was able to find this basement flooring and wallpaper, and yeah, I just tried to make it look like things that had been down there rusting for a long time, and like nothing had been taken care of. And yeah, this room is really creepy. I'm thinking back to the kinds of things that happened down in this room, and none of it was nice. None of it was nice. You could see that surgical light there. Yeah. That's not exactly what happens, but yeah, I won't say any more about that. But I think that this room actually came out really well. It's funny that I'm really satisfied with how the basement of all the rooms in the house looks. But anyway, moving on now to the final part of the house. I'm just doing some landscaping in the backyard, and I'm also including this gazebo. So the gazebo is an important part of the series. I won't give away what it's about exactly, but if you notice, the style of the gazebo is different from the style of the rest of the house, and that's because it was added on very, 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 very recently in the show. So I won't say any more about that, but that's what I was trying to do when I was creating this gazebo. And yeah, like the front yard, I wanted the backyard to look overgrown but like it had once been beautifully landscaped. So that's why I used a lot of thistle that I sized up, and oh yeah, and I also end up using a lot of daisies that look sort of overgrown, as well as these creepy rose bushes. So yeah, I think it looks really nice, and I'm so proud of this build. We're actually coming to the end of the build now, and yeah, I just can't say how proud of myself I am for doing this build, and it makes me excited to do other spookier builds in the future. So I really hope that you enjoyed watching me build Murder House as much as I enjoyed making Murder House, and if you did, please be sure to give this video a like and know how much I appreciate you watching it. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoy this little machinima at the end, and I will talk to you in my next one. Goodbye!